The Avengers was released in movie theaters in 2012. I saw it in the theaters in 2012 in Cambodia because that's where I was living at the time. It was actually lucky for me that Cambodia had movie theaters at that time, because for a long time prior to that, there were no movie theaters, or at least no movie theaters that showed international movies. There were movie theaters that showed local Cambodian movies. But just shortly before this movie came out, somebody actually built a couple of major cinema complexes in Cambodia where you could go to see these international movies. So that's where I saw Avengers. I completely forgot about this until I was looking at my original review of this movie. But it was released in 3D at the time, even though it totally didn't need to be. But again, I completely forgot that this whole 3D fad had existed. It's easy to forget about, isn't it? But you may remember that after Avatar was such a big hit, being released in 3D for about, 5 years afterwards, all the movies had to be put into 3D, even if they didn't really have anything special that needed 3D on them. So I remember being in the movie theater and getting these 3D glasses which had somebody else's fingerprints all over them, and putting them on, and they kept sliding down my nose as the movie was running. I kept having to push them back up again, and just thinking to myself, I'm going to be glad when this whole 3D fad is over. And here we are. This is 2025, and I it's hard to even remember that 3D fad was a thing, but it was a thing. But I don't know why I'm babbling on about this, because you don't care about my experience in Cambodia, and nobody's watching this movie in 3D anymore because it's been out of theaters for a long time and you're watching it on your TVs. So let's talk about the Avengers movie. So this movie is a culmination of several movies which were released previously. Iron Man, Iron Man 2, Captain America, Thor, and The Incredible Hulk, kind of. We'll get to that in a moment. I've talked about all of those movies on this channel before, and I'll link to a playlist in the description down below where I keep all my reviews of Marvel Cinematic Universe. Speaking of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they've done a lot since 2012, so it's easy to forget how anticipated the Avengers movie was when it came out. But it was very anticipated, and a lot of people, myself among them, were skeptical that it was going to work, because, somebody correct me if I'm getting this wrong, to the best of my knowledge, nothing like this had ever been done before in film. There have been crossover movies before. In fact, I just, for Halloween, reviewed a couple of them. Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, etc. But nothing on this scale where you had all these different superheroes who had to be integrated into one movie. And again, now that the Avengers movie is so far back in the past, and in hindsight, it just seems like inevitable. Like, oh, of course, this was going to be a great movie. How could it not be? But it's difficult to pull these things off. And if you need any proof of this, just look at all the failed attempts at cinematic universes that other companies have tried and failed since then, right? There was a Spider-Man cinematic universe at Sony, which didn't go anywhere. There was the DC cinematic universe, which was a disaster. There was the Universal's attempt to relaunch a monster cinematic universe. And yeah, all of those were complete disasters. So, giving credit where credit is due, this was something which was not inevitable that it would be a success, but it was well done, and they pulled it off. And I know that since then, Marvel Cinematic Universe has certainly had its ups and downs, which I guess maybe we're in a downward slump now, which makes it easy to kind of look back and view the whole thing with contempt. But, you know, at the time, I think this was a big achievement in filmmaking, or at least in franchise filmmaking, because the worry was you had all these different superheroes which had their own story and their own character arcs and had not interacted with each other, well, mostly, before this movie. And how are you going to seamlessly blend them into one storyline without it being like a bunch of... how is it going to feel like one coherent movie instead of feeling like a lot of disparate elements and disparate character notes that were all kind of being smashed together? So Joss Whedon was brought on board to do this, and this again was back before Joss Whedon fall in disgrace. I guess it turned out in the years since that he was not a very nice person on set, that he could treat the actors a little bit mean, and I believe that was the allegation against him. His star at the moment has fallen as well. But at the time, he was the golden boy of nerd culture, and he was believed he could really make those character moments sing and also make them flow seamlessly into a larger story, which he did. So the Avengers story, the Avengers movie just works perfectly with integrating all these characters, having little character moments, but on the other hand, having a plot and having the whole thing just hum along very nicely. Although, it's also almost non-stop action from beginning to end. So if you want to... I guess you do have to be careful about praising it too much. It's not simply brilliant character moments throughout the whole thing, although the brilliant character moments are integrated. It's also just a lot of action, which is carrying the movie. And if you're an action junkie, like I am, and like a lot of men are, for whatever reason, we men love this stupid stuff, then it's just a very thrilling movie with a great climactic scene. So you have all these Avengers. They're all superpowered. What's going to be a bad guy big enough to keep them all busy? Well, the answer that the filmmakers came up with was not just one single bad guy, but a whole alien invasion. So there are all these aliens all over New York, and they have to go all over New York, zipping and zapping and flying up and down to fight all these huge aliens. And it worked because there were plenty of bad guys and it gave them all plenty to do. Now, I guess in retrospect, the problem here is that where do you go from here? And in all subsequent Avengers movies, they've just continued to find the same solution. The Avengers fight hordes of invading aliens or hordes of invading robots or some sort of horde of invaders, which critics have pointed out gets a little bit tiresome after a while, but that's all off in the future. This is the first movie, and besides, what else are you going to do with the Avengers, right? You can't have all 5 Avengers just fighting Doctor Doom, right? You've got to have more stuff going on to give them more stuff to do. But certainly be warned ahead of time. I don't know why I'm saying be warned ahead of time. Everybody's already seen this movie by now, right? But if you haven't, be warned ahead of time that it is just pretty much non-stop action. When I originally saw this movie in the theaters, I was going with some friends who were women and who were not big action movie fans. But one of them, we were in the line buying tickets, and one of them said, I heard that this movie isn't really an action movie. It's more of a comedy with some action thrown in. And I said, yeah, okay. And then we got out of the movie, and I turned to her and I said, boy, you had that completely wrong, didn't you? I said, that was a movie that was nonstop action with a little bit of jokes sprinkled in, rather than the reverse. And she said, yeah. and she had a tired look on her face, like she really maybe had not enjoyed that movie. So, if you're not an action fan, and I hate to be stereotypical, but these usually fall along gender lines, right? Men tend to like action movies more than women, or am I being stereotypical? But yeah, if you're not a big action movie fan, I'd be curious to know how much you tolerated this movie. So yeah, let's talk about the Incredible Hulk here. This movie made a big deal at the time for recasting the Incredible Hulk. And again, this is something that's easy to forget about in retrospect, since Mark Ruffalo has so embodied that character in all the subsequent movies that it's easy to forget that some of us were attached to Ed Norton's Incredible Hulk before this movie came out. And at the time, it was not stated why Ed Norton was not being called back for that role. Ed Norton had wanted to come back to it, was willing to come back to it, but they didn't want him. Yeah, I believe it's come out since that the reason they didn't want him is because he was notoriously difficult to work with. He's one of those actors who wants a lot of creative control in the movie. And in the Incredible Hulk movie starring Ed Norton, there were a lot of fights on the set over the direction of that movie. And it's interesting to go back and read some of those, because I'm somewhat sympathetic to Ed Norton's point of view. That maybe some of the things that he wanted in that movie would have made that movie a better movie. But in a big production like this, where all these movies are heading into this kind of one endpoint and everybody's got to be on board the train, I guess maybe you don't have a lot of room for people who aren't team players. I don't know. But I think this movie would have been better if Ed Norton had been called back. And, Mark Ruffalo's Hulk has been good, but maybe I'm just biased. I really like Ed Norton as an actor. And I would have loved to see Ed Norton acting in this movie. Him sharing the same scenes with Robert Downey Jr., or the rest of the gang when they're in the Avengers are making quips with each other. And yeah. So, and as well, it's a continuity thing, right? So we all went to see the Incredible Hulk movie, or saw it on video, with the expectation that this Incredible Hulk and this actor would be setting up for the Avengers movie. Well, actually, sorry, I take it back. At the time the Incredible Hulk movie came out, I don't think a lot of us were thinking about the Avengers movie just yet. But still, with the Incredible Hulk being recast, it does make it seem like that piece of the puzzle doesn't fit seamlessly into the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe anymore. To the point where I wonder whether it's even considered as part of continuity, the events of that Incredible Hulk movie. But anyways, it's a minor point. I've talked about it long enough. So yeah, let me know what you thought of the Avengers movie. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.